Today we are talking about using freehand in tattoo design. When I was first starting in tattoo shops, there were no iPads, there was no Procreate, and your tattoo was only as good as the freehand drawing behind it. So we would draw a lot of pictures, and you start to realize that the secret to finishing a great freehand drawing is all about how you started. We are Tattoo Design School, and we specialize in the artwork that goes into great tattoos. We've tattooed thousands of clients over the last 20 years, and today we're going to show you how we use freehand drawing over 3 real-life projects. First, we freehand a skull for a shoulder tattoo. Then we freehand a koi for the leg. And then we freehand a Cheshire Cat for the shoulder blade. But let's go over some theory first and make sure to hit the subscribe button. Now, there's a technique in tattooing called freehand where you tattoo something without a stencil. But this video is referring to freehand drawing, and that's when you create a drawing from scratch without using a technique like tracing or overdrawing. With overdrawing, you start with an image or a composition on the computer. You then print that out on paper at a low opacity, so you can draw right on top of the print. So this ends up being a bit like tracing. But with freehand, you do the entire drawing from a blank sheet of paper. With both methods, everything is pretty much the same except for those first few steps, and both styles end up looking fairly similar. Now, when you're doing a freehand drawing, there are some really important things to get started. Freehand doesn't mean you go in cold and draw everything completely from scratch. Every good freehand drawing starts with a lot of research and references, and you want to figure out your basic composition by doing a few sheets of thumbnails. With these, you want to keep it fast and loose, and this kind of drawing is also a great warm-up. And look, I almost never work with artists who do this, but trust me, you will end up doing better drawings if you just spend the 5 minutes doing a crappy warm-up drawing first. Alright, so now that we got all that, let's get started. Okay, so this is a bit of a hot take, but I think that plain old cheap printer paper is the best paper for freehand drawing. The paper in my sketchbook is just too precious, and when I got paper like this, I just keep trying to make every drawing a masterpiece. I use the same 4 tools for all my drawings: a hard pencil, a soft pencil, a mechanical pencil, and an eraser. And when I'm doing a freehand drawing, the process is almost always the same, so I'm going to break it down into sections. And the first stage is always a very light composition pass. It's super important to remember that going dark too early will make every future stage a lot more difficult, so make sure to keep things light. After that, we go in with a slightly darker pass, and here we're reinforcing certain areas with a little more weight and definition. Now, once you got a structure that's working for you, you want to start blocking in your shading. And just like the first 2 stages, make sure to keep this shading really light and sketchy. And when you're done, it should sort of look like a really light version of the completed artwork. Everything up until now has been really easy to erase, but now we go in with our first dark pass, and to do this I switch to my soft pencil. And I usually start out by sort of lining the piece, which adds a ton of definition. But if we went too dark in those first few stages, this stage would look like a mess. And now that we have a really defined structure, we go back to our hard pencil and start with the middle values. This is all the shading in the middle range, and then we finish off the darker sections with our soft pencil. And in the final stages of drawing, we're going back and forth and doing a bit of everything. And this is a good time to clean up any areas of negative space with your eraser. And it's possible to overwork a drawing, so take things as far as they should go and then call it done. With most of my drawings, I scan them and drop them into either Photoshop or Procreate, because there's always a part where the proportions or the composition could be a bit better. And one of the first things I do is flip the drawing. This sort of resets your eye and makes it easy to find mistakes, and I then use the Liquify tool to move sections of the artwork around without having to redraw anything. But the main takeaways are: get good at thumbnails, always do a 5-minute warm-up, keep your drawings light until you get a solid structure, and that will allow you to move into your darks with confidence. And that's a lot of theory, but let's see how all that works over these next 3 projects. This is the Skull and Smoke tattoo design. The brief for this design is fairly simple. Our client would like a skull on her shoulder, and for that skull to be wearing a hood. And as usual, I start with a few thumbnails and some research. And to get our drawing started, I go in with my first light composition pass. Now, normally I'd be doing this with a hard and dull pencil, but I decided to use the mechanical pencil for the first pass, and I used the same pencil to do a second pass to build up some weight and definition in certain areas. I can then use my regular hard pencil to do a very light pass and block in all the shading. You'd be surprised with how many people skip this step, but it makes it a lot easier to see what you're doing. And at this stage, I can move into my solid black shading with my soft and dark pencil. And this pencil wants to smudge, so I'm doing my best to complete one section at a time and move from top to bottom. Now, you could just as easily use image generation to create the starting point for this design, but I have a lot of experience with drawing skulls, so I feel comfortable with doing them in freehand. Now, I would not feel the same way if I had to freehand something that I had a lot less experience with, like an elephant, for example. So for your designs, just do whatever feels most comfortable. The same with all my drawings, I flip the image and look for issues with the proportions. And then I make a few small changes with the Liquify tool before flipping it back. And if you want to see the full process of making the skull and smoke tattoo design, it will have its own dedicated video where we go into much greater detail. But what happens when we have to cover a much larger area? This is the koi and water tattoo design. Our client would like a koi done in a neo-Japanese style, and that just means the design will be a modern take on a classic Japanese theme. And after a lot of research, we're now prepared for the freehand drawing. And this design is perfect for freehand. If you tried to use image generation as a starting point, you'd probably struggle to get a solid image. AI tools are notoriously bad at capturing the nuance that comes from authentic cultural heritage, and some forms are always going to be best when they're done with the human hand in practice. Now, I'm not claiming to be the best at drawing koi, but this is a great example of a design that I can only do in freehand. For me, there's really no other technique that works. Now, your experience might be totally different, so just use whatever feels best for you. I do feel it's worth taking the time to learn how to draw even a few things from cultural antiquity, and that investment in time will pay itself off in the tattoo shop. Here I'm just finishing things up, and at this stage I can start to see a few things that could be redrawn or improved. But this artwork is a first draft to show the client. Once they take a look, we can make a few choices and then go from there. And if you like the koi and water tattoo design, then you will definitely want to check out its own dedicated video, where we go into much greater detail. But what about a design where the freehand gets a bit crazy? This is the Cheshire Cat tattoo design. Our client would like a Cheshire Cat on her back shoulder blade, and after looking at historical research and generating some images for ideas, we're ready to go in with our freehand drawing. Now with this project, we could either do it with a generated image as the base, or we could freehand the entire image from scratch, which is what we ended up doing. Now my opinions of what methods to use actually change over time. This design is a great example of how I could go either way. A lot of the generated images I made while researching for this drawing were actually pretty good, and some of them would make good starting points. But in the end I went with freehand because I just knew it would be a lot of fun to draw. For your designs, I would suggest taking the time just to learn every technique so you can then decide what technique is best for your projects. I will say this though on a personal note, if you know that your client is a fan of your drawings, then it can be really special when you nail the art and then hand them that drawing. There's really nothing else like it. But don't get me wrong, I really love designing in the computer and on the tablet. But yeah, drawing sort of has its own place. And after checking the art and making a few small changes in the computer, we put the artwork onto a blank. And the Cheshire Cat tattoo design also has its own video where you will learn a lot more about how to create a design like this. And that is 3 examples that go over the process that we use when doing a freehand drawing. Freehand drawing is a difficult art to master, but it will always be a vital tool that you will need in your toolbox. So look forward to more freehand drawing videos soon. But for now, I hope this video helped. I thank you for watching and I wish you all the best in your future projects. Hey, if you got anything out of this, then help us out by hitting the like button and subscribe to our channel. We come out with new videos often. And make sure to hit the bell icon so you don't miss out. And if you're serious about creating the best art possible for your tattoos, then go to tattoodesignschool.com and check out the masterclass. This is everything I wish I knew when I was first starting out, and it will push you to create artwork you didn't think was possible. This is the perfect investment in your tattoo career, so check out the masterclass at tattoodesignschool.com. But most importantly, share this video with the person you know who's interested in artwork and tattoos. And we'll see you in the next one.